And welcome into the latest edition of the Unpaid Interns. I'm Austin Render, joined by the lovely Tamar Scher here on Wednesday, June 3rd. And before we continue on our show, as planned today, it is Student Media Appreciation Week. We will continue that here on today's show. We have some great guests coming on. But we feel we need to make a statement, as everyone has, and we didn't do that. We failed to do that on Monday. We glossed over the topic of the riots on the show, which in hindsight was a mistake. And I feel like that needs to be addressed even here on our show. This isn't a political podcast, but it isn't a political issue. It's a human heart issue. And we feel it needs to be addressed. So we just want to make a statement here off the top of our show. And as a white male, I can't relate to the struggles and the difficulties that the Black community has. I won't pretend to, but I will listen and educate myself as best I can. You hear about the major incidents, but most get brushed under the rug and don't make it to national news. However, that is changing, and thank goodness it is, because now we are seeing the incredibly flawed systems that we have here in America, thanks to people videotaping these horrific events that are happening around our country. And we're seeing firsthand and realizing that something needs to be done. I support those who are out there protesting peacefully, and I support the change that is needed in this country and in our society. We hear you, we are listening, and we stand and we support you. I'm a religious person, and when there are times of trouble in my life or in the lives around me, I always turn to the scripture. And in Matthew 22:39, Jesus talks about the second commandment: love your neighbor as yourself. And I think we need more of that in this world right now. Let's show that godly love to everyone, every day, no matter their race, ethnicity, gender. Not everyone on the street will be protesting, but we can all take a part in some way. Every small action can make a big difference. So go out there every day, do something good for somebody. Be a positive light in a world that desperately needs it right now. We could really use some positivity in this world. So love every neighbor out there. Go do something good and spread the love in our country right now. So that's how we wanted to get the show started. We felt like it needed to be addressed. I'll bring in Tamar here. Tamar, I know this has been a tough time for a lot of people, but just wanted to make sure that everyone knows Unpaid Interns here on our podcast. We are in full support of what is going on, of the protests, and we want to see the change that is needed in this country.
Austin, you said it perfectly. Seriously, it's with a heavy heart that we have to talk about this still, and that this issue is still going on in our country. Our country really and our world feels divided right now. But like you said, love your neighbor as yourself. If you're religious or not, that's a powerful saying, that's powerful to many, many people. And I actually feel that this is a time of unification. We're seeing that a lot of people are coming together, of different backgrounds, of different religions, coming together for a single purpose, which is to fight against police brutality and fight for equality. And we talk also about how sports figures in particular are using their voices to make an impact in our society, part of that unification of our country, coming together and fighting for one cause. And in particular, we saw Colin Kaepernick in 2016 kneeling at the national anthem. And you saw that the NFL was very divided on that topic. And again, Colin Kaepernick coming out and saying, you know what, this needs to stop. And he actually started a legal defense fund to help people that have been arrested for protesting and protesting peacefully, no less. So talk on that subject. A lot of sports figures in particular are speaking out for the cause and are really making a change.
Yeah, and I think Richard Sherman said it best. He said it's important that people are speaking out, but it's important that the white athletes are speaking out, because they can hit home with some of the people that may not realize what's going on, may not know the depth of the issues that are happening. And I think that's important, that you have people like Carson Wentz and you have other white athletes who are stepping out and saying things and using their platform. Sports is a unique platform. You have millions of followers. You have people who literally worship your sports teams. And as an athlete, you have an incredible platform to use. And it's it's certainly positive to see people using that. And I tell you what, Tamar, this is just another example. We really need sports back, because sports is the ultimate healer, and hopefully that will be something that can help our society kind of unite behind the same cause, which is sports. And let's transition to some other sports news. The NBA is getting close to a 22 team restart that would go from July 31st until October, I believe, 21st or 12th, somewhere in mid-October.
Yeah,
And
it says game 7 is on October 12th, is what they're
so
proposing.
if you make it to the finals, you would have to be quarantined in Orlando from the end of July, August, September, and into mid-October. 2.5 months of quarantining and playing basketball, maybe not seeing your family, certainly not seeing your friends outside of basketball. That feels like it could take a toll on some players.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to talk about, is the family piece of it. They are talking about allowing families to come and be in Orlando and have that resort kind of atmosphere. But at the same time, the families aren't going to stay there forever. Players are going to have to do their job if this is proposed. And they're talking about later this week, Commissioner Adam Silver and the Players Association is going to talk to that Board of Governors on Thursday, I believe, to see if they want to continue this proposal. But like you said, I think it's going to be very difficult if this, obviously we want sports back, but think of the players' families, think of their life, and it's going to really disrupt it. And maybe that's a good thing, because right now they've been able to be with their family for a long period of time. So maybe it'll be nice to kind of go back to that normal feel of life. But I think it'll be difficult for the family impact in particular.
Yeah, I think that'll be the most difficult part is, do they get to bring their family? Are they away from their family for 2.5 months? And you mentioned it will be voted on Thursday in the NBA meeting with the players and the owners, and they will vote on that just tomorrow. So we'll have an answer, and Adrian Wojnarowski says that it should pass easily, and they'll start to get going for a July 31st. It'll be a regular season mixed in to a playoff system. So we'll
And
keep
gosh,
an
what a
eye on that.
what a packed fall. I mean, you'll have the NBA finals, then you got the World Series, the Masters, possibly the Kentucky Derby. There's all of these things that are being postponed, and it's going right into the fall. So that'll be kind of a fun time, won't it?
Absolutely. There's a ton going on in the sports world. And for Indiana, they have announced that athletes will begin to come back here in June. June 15th, the football team will be allowed to begin voluntary workouts. The men's and women's basketball teams will be allowed back June 18th, men's soccer on July 13th, and many of the other sports surrounding those July dates. So what's your take on this? It feels like a positive step in the right direction to possibly get collegiate sports back.
I think it's a good thing that they are following in suit with the pro teams. I mean, what we were talking about, they need to start practices in order to prevent injuries. I keep harping on this subject, but I think it's a positive turn of events that we're seeing more and more teams start to being allowed to have voluntary workouts, because that'll get players in the routine to get in play, get in shape. And it's still voluntary. The protocols are still in place, but I think this is a really good transition into having a positive season ahead, because in the Big Ten, obviously everything's to be determined, but a lot of teams in the conference are starting to get back to workouts.
Well, that'll be one step, is getting everybody back. Fred Glass mentioned, until there's no vaccine, there will always be risk involved, but they're hoping that they have the best doctors, the best protocols, and athletes who will stick to that and make this work for everybody involved. Because again, we need sports back for more reasons than you may think. I truly think sports will be a helpful part in uniting this country that is completely divided right now. and nothing unites people better than everybody rooting for their sports team. So hopefully we can get sports back here pretty soon. And if we do, like that newsletter said today, Indiana men's soccer would come back July 13th. And one of the men who has covered the Indiana men's soccer team the past couple of years works with the IU Media Relations Department. And he's also a huge Tottenham Hotspur fan. We're bringing in Jared Rigdon here into our podcast. Jared, how's it going?
Pretty good. Can you guys hear me and everything?
Yeah,
Oh
you're all
yeah.
good.
Awesome. Sounds good.
Yeah, so what's quarantine been like for you? I mean, we were supposed to be at school through March and April and covering sports and the baseball team and the softball team and Little Five, and obviously all that's taken away. What's it been like for you not having that?
And it was definitely an adjustment early on, especially going back home and trying to finish out the school year, because you still have, 6 weeks of classes plus finals. And it was a bit of an adjustment for the students just as much as it was for the professors. But I think as it kind of went on, we kind of developed a different kind of routine because you have a routine at school and then you have to develop a new routine here at home. But I think I, kind of ease myself into it and eventually, finish the school year off strong. And I've just been working and, just trying to kill the time and keep busy as much as possible.
So what are you doing to kill the time? How are you keeping busy?
Oh, I work a lot. I have 2 jobs. So, and I also, I picked up an internship with Softball America doing some writing. So, most of the time I'm never even home, honestly. So I'm home, late at night and doing some writing, watching some TV, just killing the time that way.
Have you been able to catch much of the Bundesliga and their restart to things?
Yeah, I watched a couple of Dortmund's matches. I'm not a huge Dortmund fan, but I do like watching Erling Haaland play and Jadon Sancho. And I like watching any of the Americans play in the Bundesliga. It's definitely interesting, especially watching, Der Klassiker with, Bayern and Dortmund, but being behind closed doors with, some interesting artificial crowd noise, which I'm kind of,
I was going to
50-50
ask you about
split on that because it's kind of a continuous loop of sounds. So even when like Bayern score and in an away match, it was still, blurring the noise as if Dortmund was scoring. So I was kind of confused on who was controlling the sound and whether it was just a continuous loop of the same, chants from the Dortmund fans that was previously recorded. But it's just nice to see, professional athletes back out there on the stage. And you see, this past weekend, especially with everything going on in this country, sports, people notice what's going on in sports, even if it's behind closed doors. Jadon Sancho and Weston McKennie making statements about, George Floyd and everything that's going on in America, even if they're thousands of miles away. People pay attention to what goes on in sports and how people, especially professional athletes, compose themselves and present themselves, even when there's no fans in attendance.
Yeah, so what we've kind of been going through this week, we're trying to highlight the student media members and what makes them so great that people may not realize because they are just students. But part of the challenge of being a student media member is gaining the respect of the people around you. I mean, you come in as an 18, 19-year-old covering the sports and you're working with people who do this for a living. How did you go about trying to gain the respect of the professionals that are covering the same beats as you?
For me, it was a lot about, first off, getting the respect of the students that were there, that were already there when you came in, whether that be the seniors like, Josh and Eddie and all those guys when I came in, or juniors like Cam and Dylan Wallace. There's a lot of students that have, grinded as soon as they got on campus. So, coming in as a freshman, I wanted to gain the respect of other, student media members, because those are the guys you work with closely and you're in classes with them every day and you're, in the same organizations as that. And once you can gain the respect of, the upperclassmen that you work with and that have grinded on the same beats as you, then you can go about, developing professional relationships, with guys like John Blau, with, formerly Mike Miller, Zach Osterman, those kind of guys, because eventually, you're going to spend so much time with them on the same beat. You want to be able to have a close relationship with them professionally and personally, because you just want to know that you can count on them and they can count on you to be a professional in the environment that they have to work in to make a living.
So Jared, how did you start? How did you really get in your freshman year? You obviously put your foot in the door because you are where you are now because of what you started doing freshman year, sophomore year. So what got you started?
Yeah. So, I mean, in high school, I was, editor in chief of my newspaper. So I knew this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to come in and do some sports reporting. So I kind of reached out and filled out I knew Galen sent out, the IDS application, the IUS TV application. I filled those out, and I was just eager to do whatever it was possible. You kind of just get my foot in the door, because I knew there's a lot of competition here. There's a lot of good students that are competing with the same kind of the jobs that you want to do. And I started out doing field hockey. When they released the beats, they were like, "You're going to be doing field hockey." And I was like, kind of didn't even know IU had a field hockey team. And I had to learn what was field hockey, because I had never watched a single minute, because we don't have field hockey at the high school level in Indiana. The only place you have it is at the college level with Ball State and IU. I believe the only teams in Indiana have it. So I had to learn the rules. And even now, I still can't say that I know every single rule of field hockey, because it is very confusing and it's very different than any other sport. But I reached out to the SID at the time. I was like, "Hey, this is my name. This is who I'm coming to report for." And I came out the first week of school, and they had a inter squad scrimmage, and I just stood there, and I had never reported anything at the college level, and it's kind of just like, what is going on? What is this? I had to learn all the names of all the players. And when, you have a big inter squad scrimmage, almost the entire team is playing at one time. So you're trying to track numbers and different who's on what team and all that kind of stuff. But eventually, as the season wore on, I kind of, I just wanted to be the best at that beat as I could, because, if you can't be the best at field hockey, you can't be the best at soccer, you can't be the best at basketball. You have to be at the top level what you're doing all the time, because that's how eventually you grow and get respect from others and continue to hone your craft as you move through the ranks at IU.
Well said.
I'm also a fellow field hockey starter. That's where I started freshman year, and I can relate to Jared. I did not know much about field hockey.
You gain respect for student media when it's raining and you're at a field hockey match, and it's like the craziest thing was so I was in finite my first semester at IU, and the morning of homecoming, we had the finite midterm or whatever at 8 a.m. And so the afternoon before, it was like cold and rainy, and I just wanted to go back to my dorm room and study for the exam. My parents were in town; they're going to take me to dinner before homecoming, and IU was playing Maryland in a field hockey match at like 3 o'clock on Friday afternoon, and it was cold and raining. It was raining sideways. And the press box at the field hockey complex is just a makeshift tent where they keep like the SID and like the BTN plus crew or whatever. So there really wasn't much room. So I had to sit outside, and it was just like pouring rain, and IU was losing like 5-0. And then I was just like, if I can grind this out, I can grind anything out, because, this is where you start, and this is where you hone your craft and really, try and tell some interesting stories that people are never going to find out about, because the professional crews they don't report about field hockey unless there's something, truly magnificent. So you got to find and tell the stories about these girls, because they're still Division I athletes. They're still out here grinding every day, and they deserve to have their stories told as well.
Believe it or not, one of the first on-campus games I've ever been to was a field hockey game against Northwestern, because I have a family friend who's on that Northwestern team. So I went to watch both sides. And then the next year, I ended up covering field hockey as well. So my freshman year, I got a couple field hockey games under me. But Jared, can you walk us through? I know every single week is so different in the sports media realm, but can you walk us through an example of what a week as a sports media student looks like? Or maybe even a day if the week is too hard.
Yeah, so I mean, I can kind of walk you through like soccer season, and I think Austin can kind of relate to this, and you as well, Tamar, being a broadcaster. But like during the fall, and I was in 15 credit hours, so I was in 5 classes or whatever. And IU usually played about 2 matches a week, or so. On average, you had a Tuesday Friday game or Tuesday Sunday type thing or whatever. So you're working as soon as the previous week finishes up, you're on to the next week. You're like, what am I thinking? Who is IU playing? What can I look at? How can I break down these matchups? When are we going to have media availability? Talk to Coach Yeagley, talk to some of the players, and then you're working on a preview as soon as possible, because you want to break down, the week ahead. What does IU have to look forward to? What is this match going to look like? Is it going to be a defensive minded match? Or are they going to be an offensive minded match? How is IU going to align their formation? that kind of stuff. And then, you get to the game, you want to get there as early as possible and try and, all right, when are the lineups going to be announced? What a pregame look like, who's in, who's out, that kind of deal. And it's different in college soccer as a professional, because in college you can make unlimited subs and you can just bring people in and out. So the starting lineup doesn't matter as much per se as it does at the professional ranks. And then, you're probably there, pretty late into the night. A typical match on a weekday starts at 7 o'clock, finishes up about 9. Coach Yeagley usually takes his time getting into the press room. After he's done talking to the squad, talking, the post-game interviews and all that kind of stuff. And then you're there till like 10:30 or whatever, and you get out and, then you start thinking about classes the next day. You got to finish up some homework. And then you got to get home, you got to eat, all that kind of stuff. And then you got to start looking ahead to the weekend ahead. What kind of stuff am I going to have to cover? And I did photos for, football for HN too this fall. So, am I going to have to travel this weekend? Michigan State, Maryland, Penn State, all that kind of stuff. So it's just about planning ahead as much as possible. And I personally like to plan a lot. I like to plan my entire life. So knowing when you're going to have to, write something, when you're going to have to interview somebody, when you're going to have to do homework for classes and all that stuff, is kind of just dissecting a day by day basis to know what am I have to do each day to make sure that I'm the most prepared for game day, for classes, for all this.
Sports
Sounds
media
about
is
right.
all about planning.
Yeah, it's a lot about plans going wrong too, because nothing ever goes right. Weather, people canceling interviews, all that kind of stuff. It never goes right, but you want to do it as best as possible to put yourself in a prime position for that. That day comes that, all right, even if something goes wrong, I'm still prepared to take advantage of whatever the day, whatever lies ahead this day.
How do you try and tackle the balance of schoolwork and covering? I know you were on soccer, you're on football, you moved to women's basketball. These are not games where it's just like, oh, there's only one day a week you have to do it and then you're fine. Like women's basketball can play twice a week, media availability. Soccer plays twice, media availability. How do you balance school with all that?
It's
you can
it's
be
about
honest.
You always do your best to attend classes. That's the number one priority. And thankfully, when you have to miss classes because of, games or whatever, most professors, especially in the media school, are really understanding, and they're like, this is what you want to do. You need to go do that. And, make sure that you make up whatever is in class. But, it's making sure that you plan out each day, you look at what homework do I need to do and when is it due? And rank the priority, all right, well, this homework assignment is due Wednesday, but there's a game Tuesday, so I need to work on this preview on Monday because this is going to come first, even before that homework assignment. Even if that homework assignment takes a little bit longer, get what's due out of the way first to make sure that you have everything done when you need to have it done. So you're not scrambling at the last minute, oh, I got this homework assignment due at 11:59, but I haven't started till 10:30 because we had a game. But if you start that, the day before there's a game, Monday night, and you can work on like 3/4 of the assignment, then when you're done with the game, you're like, all right, I just have a little bit to finish up once that game's over, and I can get my game story and I can get that homework assignment done. And then by, Tuesday, 11:59, you're done with both the game and the homework assignment. It's just about balancing what needs to be done at the right time, and, take advantage of all the time you have throughout the college day, because, for the most part, pre-pandemic, with all the new health regulations we're going to have to go through and all that kind of stuff, you had a bunch of time throughout the day. Most of my classes are finished with 2:30, 3 o'clock. So, from like 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock, you have a lot of time to get some homework done, eat, do all that kind of stuff, and make sure you're best prepared for the night when, games usually start about 7 o'clock. So from about that 3 o'clock to 7 o'clock window, you have a lot of time to get to and from your apartment, get, eat, shower and do all that kind of stuff and get ready for the game while also getting some homework done.
Gosh, don't you just miss the grind? I do.
I really do, honestly. Like, this has really made me appreciate what we did like these last couple of years. And, even if it isn't exactly the same, college lifestyle this next year, I just want to be back in Bloomington, just being back with everybody, having games and all that kind of stuff. You kind of take it for granted when you're in the middle of it. And then when it's kind of taken away, you're like, oh crap, I really want that back.
Stefan told us a story about when he first told his mom he skipped the class in order to do an interview. Do you have anything like that where you skip the class and your parents are like, oh my gosh, what are you doing, Jared? But you slowly realize, this is kind of what I have to do sometimes.
I don't always tell them when I skip class, but they do know that occasionally I'll have to miss, something or the other. There's like when I told them I was going to, to Penn State, when we went to Penn State for the Big Ten tournament, Connor and I went out to the Big Ten tournament for men's soccer, and then we went to Penn State for football. I had to miss 2 days of classes, and I also had to miss like 3 days of classes when I volunteered at the Big Ten women's basketball tournament. So it was just about, getting ahead with your professors. And I was just like, yeah, mom, I've got it all taken care of. I'll just take the exams early, just do all this. And as long as you, communicate with your professors for the most part, it's good. But she was like, my mom was like, you're missing how many exams? And I was like, no, I'm taking them early. Don't worry. Like they're going to get done. Like, don't worry. I'll do my best on them. For the most part, I did my best on them. And, it's just about communicating with everybody so that nobody's getting mad that you're skipping their class, or that you're not in the place where you're supposed to be at the right time or whatever.
Yeah, sometimes we have to reassure our parents that everything's okay. We have it under control.
I think they forget sometimes about what it was like being in college too, knowing that it's like there's just so many different elements going on that you have to just sometimes you like just need a day off or something like that, just to recuperate your mind or whatever. And just as long as you get your work done and you communicate, I think pretty much everything's fine.
Well, before we go, I want to talk a little bit about the soccer team. Last year, it kind of felt like they exceeded expectations, but also fell short in the same season. Like it just was a weird year. They lose, they get shocked. What is the outlook for 2020 if it happens? What should we expect from this Indiana soccer team?
Yeah, I mean, I think last year you had a lot of uncertainty, especially, the narrative all year was, you lost 10, 11 starters. The only returning starter was Jack Mayer, who ended up getting drafted in ML Super Draft this year. You had questions at goalie, which eventually were answered by Roman Celentano. And you had a lot of questions about guys that had played sparingly that were going to step up, and a lot of freshmen that needed to step up. And throughout the course of the year, those questions were answered. Spencer Glass will be on every single All-American list, at the beginning of this next season. He's arguably one of the best players in all of college soccer. And you pair that with, guys like AJ Palazzolo, who had played sparingly at different positions, and he kind of settled into a role that could be obviously changed this year because he is a Swiss Army knife. He can play at any position. But now you have a bunch of guys that have experienced one college season or multiple college seasons and are accustomed to, producing at the highest level, whether it be Josh Penn, Victor Becerra, Herbert Endley. Those are guys that now know what it's like to produce at the highest level. And you're going to have a team that's one of the most talented in all college soccer, if not the most talented in my opinion, because you just have so many different pieces that you can put anywhere on the field that I don't even know how Todd Yeagley is going to align his team, because there's so many different players that can play on that first team. It's kind of unbelievable to think about.
Are there any new ads that you've seen that you think are just going to add a great amount to the team? And do you know what to expect?
I think on the defensive level, you can look at Callum Stretch, that transfer from Denver. He is an All-American type player. He's going to come in and hopefully, fill Jack Mayer's shoes at center back. Jack Mayer's younger brother, Joey Mayer, is one guy that, Coach Yeagley's talked about. I know he's from near you out tomorrow. So, the Mayer name is, synonymous with, glory at IU now. So Joey Mayer's got, shoes to fill, but he's a high quality player, knows what it takes to win at IU. And, there's other players that didn't, have as much role last year. Brett Beebe was a guy that Todd Yeagley really liked, and I could see stepping up this year. Daniel Muni was the guy that really kind of went unheralded last year and was really sorely missed in the Sweet 16 against UC Santa Barbara. He was amazing player at center back, and I think that he can be even better this year. And then guys like Ian Black, who missed a majority of last season with a foot injury, who was our leading scorer through about 3 weekends. And Thomas Moore, a guy that I predicted, at the beginning of the season to be an outstanding player, and he kind of just he had some bright moments that really never got going. And I think that this year is another time for him to step up and produce, high quality scoring opportunities.
Before we say goodbye, we've asked this to all the students so far this week. Kind of give us a memory, whether it's a game, a quote, a moment that stands out to you in your time so far as a student media journalist at IU.
Oh boy, there are a lot.
Stefan gave us a Red Steppers moment, so
of course he did.
Anything is possible.
Oh God, There's a lot of great moments, honestly. These last 2 years have been incredible. There's I have three, and I won't go into detail, but I'll just list off the
That's
three.
fine. That's fine.
The first game, the first IU football game that I went to as a student was IU Virginia, and I was on the sideline shooting photos, and I got absolutely drenched, and I was so miserable during the game, and I was cold and I was wet and it was windy, and I just wanted to go back to my dorm and go to bed. And I was like, you know what, just stick this out. This is the first thing, but I was so wet when I got home, but I ended up getting a photo on the front page of the IDS, and I got some pretty cool photos of games in the rain, and that was the first moment of IU football that I ever had, which as a student, which was pretty dope. The IU Marquette basketball game, I covered IU basketball for IU's TV as a freshman. Just being in that environment, first time as a student, seeing the crowd just amped up, IU going off and just blasting Marquette was an incredible environment to be in. And then being at the Big Ten tournament in Maryland this past year, when IU grabbed the double-double, the penalty kick shootout against Michigan to win it, and Todd Yeagley just kind of embracing all of his guys that had come back and they weren't expected to do much, especially after losing to Maryland in the regular season. They came back and dominated Maryland, ended up winning in the semifinals, and then took a close one to Michigan when most of their team was beat up and just had gone through so many minutes of soccer in one weekend. And just seeing the image on his face and them celebrating out on the field at Ludwig Field was just an incredible moment to be at, even though it was cold. And Connor and I were likely, we were just hoping that we weren't going to get stranded at Dulles Airport again, so that, that was, those are the fun moments. And, everything in between. Student media it's not even at the games. It's the road trips. It's, stopping to get food, going to Jacksonville, flying out to Maryland, with Connor and going back and forth, getting stranded at the airport till 1 a.m. It's those memories that you hang on to for the longest time. It's not even the games for the most part. It's the memories, it's the people you meet, and it's the places you visit. The things that make, being a student media and just being a college student, that much great.
Well, that was great. That's a great way to leave it, Jared. Hopefully we'll all be back to have more of those moments and memories here come August. But thanks for joining us today. Best of luck this summer, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you guys for having me on.
That was Jared
Thanks, Jared.
Rigdon, IU Media Relations intern, and we now bring in BTN Student U broadcaster, IUS TV football reporter, Haley Jordan. Haley, how's it going?
Good. How are you guys?
Oh, we're great. Happy to have you here. What's quarantine been like for you? We're in month 4, 3. I don't even know. I've lost track. But what have you been up to?
Well, I am from a town called Pittsboro, Indiana, population 2,000. And so I probably spent 2 or 3 months in quarantine there with my family. Literally didn't do anything. My dad was the designated Walmart runner. And then just the other day, I moved down to Bloomington officially so I can start getting some projects done and prepping for IU football season this year.
What's kind of go ahead, Tamar. Yeah. You go.
I'm just going to say, oh, you're fine. I was just going to ask, what does the football preparation look like when there's no sports going on and there's not much, and they're saying, okay, June 15th is the day that voluntary workouts can start. So what does preparation look like for a student media student hungry for sports?
Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, just praying every night that it happens. An article literally came out a couple hours ago that said that it's more than likely going to happen. And there's probably no way that the 14 teams in the Big Ten are going to play without one team, so I'm pretty confident that all 14 teams are going to play, even Rutgers and, the East Coast schools. So I'm pretty confident in that. So once I kind of got the green light on that, I'm like, okay, it's time to start grinding. It's time to start looking for story ideas, studying rosters. I love to look at Hoosier Huddle and stuff like that to kind of see the IU football news and to get updated on that. So now for me, it's learning the new roster, seeing the incoming freshmen, looking at their high school stats, kind of seeing what they're going to offer to this football team.
Well, what else has been keeping you busy? I mean, we all have to try and find something to do during this quarantine. What has it been for Haley?
Oh, well, I've been very excited about this opportunity. So last year was my first year as an IUS TV reporter, and I worked really closely with Kenny Smith. And one day I was anchoring with Maya Engel on Women in Sports Day. How fitting is that? We were both co-anchors on a sports show, and I was like, Maya, it's two girls up here, and we're doing sports together. And Kenny was like, you know what? I like this. Let's roll with this. Why don't you guys, along with Meredith Strewing, start something called Driven by Women and create something? And at first we were like, yeah, okay, Kenny, like that's funny. Thanks. I'm glad you think we can do that. And then we really started thinking and we're like, we could do this. We're only three women. There's not a lot of women in sports, but let's run with this. And within a couple of weeks, we built up an organization from the ground up, and it's been a lot keeping busy with that. Maya has graduated, so for now it's just me and Meredith kind of running things. But just the other day, we had a Zoom session where we taught everybody Adobe Premiere, and we had a lot of participants, and we had a great turnout. So we're also working on that this summer, and it's very nice because we are so bored. It's keeping us busy. It's helping others.
So Haley, first of all, that's awesome. And I didn't realize that that was a thing because I was gone last semester, but awesome that you're doing that. I love it, obviously. But I have a question for you. So you've been at this for now, I believe it's 2 years or 3 years for you?
2 years, yeah, me too.
2 years. How have you been able to gain respect from older and younger reporters who are also in this grind with you in the sports media program? What have you been able to learn from them, and how do you kind of gain that respect of credibility and that you know what you're talking about?
Yeah, I was thinking about this the other day because I am just so passionate about sports, and especially the NFL and bigger sports beyond college. And I was wondering, like, how did I get here? Because as a kid, I didn't like watching sports. I liked playing them, but I didn't ever care to sit there and watch them. And I definitely was not wanting to be a sideline reporter, that's for sure. So my freshman and sophomore year of college, I did nothing media related. I went to class, I went to the gym, and I came home and I studied, and I wasn't in any media classes. And I knew I wanted to be in journalism, but I didn't want to do sports. I wanted to do news. And then my junior year, my second semester, not even my first semester, junior year, I went to Lucas Oil for an Indy 11 soccer game. And I got there early, and they were like, hey, like, do you want to come and walk on the field and kind of to get a tour of Lucas Oil? And I was like, me? Yeah, like, let's go. And they gave me a tour. I could see all the soccer players warming up. I could see media on the sidelines. And I thought, you know what? This atmosphere is awesome. And I want to be on the sidelines as a media professional someday. And so that's when I was like, you know what, Mom, I know nothing about sports, but just watch me. I'm going to do this. And I'm going to become a sideline reporter. And she was like, all right, like whatever. And last year, almost a year ago today, was the first time I ever created a video package. I was an intern at Wish TV, somehow landed that opportunity. I don't know how, but by the grace of God, I got that internship. And I had no idea what a package was until I was 21 years old, which was last year. But since then, I have made probably, I would say, anywhere from 50 packages to 60 packages. So once you learn everything and you have a couple of internships under your belt, then you can really start being credible. I think the hardest part was being able to learn all of the sports lingo, because as a woman, we really have to know our sports lingo, or else people are going to say, oh, she doesn't deserve to be in sports. She doesn't deserve to be here. But I just think as I've gotten to make connections with you guys and other people, that's what makes me a credible sports reporter, because I'm here, I'm an IUS TV reporter at Big Ten Network, and I'm also able to seek you guys out for help. Like, I know Austin has helped me with Adobe Premiere tricks. Tamar, I've hit you up so many times to be like, how do I do this? Mary Kate Hamilton was really instrumental in helping me as well. Galen Clavio obviously is like the god of sports at IU. So I could not have done this without older. Well, you guys are younger than me. You guys were younger and helped. You guys are actually younger than me and helped me out. So I could not have made it to this seat today without you guys and without other people in the sports media program. So thank you for that.
Well, I was going to ask what women in sports, maybe at IU, have kind of been influential. I mean, Mary Kate obviously getting fourth in the Jim Nance Award, top woman in the country, was awesome for IU. Who have you kind of looked up to that's kind of helped you along in this process?
Yeah, first and foremost, I heard of Mary Kate when I was a sophomore and when I was starting to kind of look into sports a little bit. But then junior year is when I really started to hear her name. And I remember texting her one time. Somebody, I think it was Drew Fry, he gave me her number. He's like, reach out to Mary Kate. She knows what she's doing. And I was like, hi, I've never done sports report, but I would love to be a sports reporter. And since then, I would always just watch her packages and just see how she would conduct herself in class and interviews and her research. And I was like, you know what, that girl knows what she's doing. And also Tamar has helped me a lot too. I remember my first time reporting for Big Ten Network, you came and sat with me and you helped me. And I had no idea what to do. I was like, what's a sideline hit? I don't even know what that is. And that was why my first sideline reporting gig was a success, because Tamar took the time to sit with me in the media school commons and tell me what was up and what I needed to learn. And I really hope that now that I kind of know my way around, that I can do that for some other younger sports reporter hopefuls.
I mean, thank you, but don't give me that much credit, because your voice, you've always had that in you. And like you said, we women, we need to know the sports lingo, and you're studying that, and that's part of the grind, that's part of the study, and everyone needs to know the same basic things. So keep on grinding. You're awesome, and you've always had that performative voice that has carried you along too. And Mary Kate too. I mean, she is awesome. That's a great role model to have. Number 4 female sports reporter.
Oh my gosh, I saw that. I was like, yeah, it was crazy. It's awesome.
Great. And can you walk us through? So you are going to be an IU football beat reporter next fall, but you've done Big Ten Student U sideline work in the past. Can you walk us through what a week is like when you have a game that you're going to cover?
Oh my goodness, no sleep, that's for sure. I think media students get less sleep than medical students. I will take that to the grave. But basically a week when there were a couple games, sometimes I would have a couple games because I covered volleyball and sometimes a couple other things. So what my week would look like would be wake up around 8, go to class all day, go to my internship. I worked at the IU newsroom and I'm a reporter for them, a print reporter, so a little bit different. And then after that, I walk home, get home about 5:30, and then it's study time. I sit there on my laptop for maybe an hour, 2 hours, just looking for some bait to grab onto, looking for a storyline, looking for something interesting. Sam Niederman calls them nuggets, and I have adopted that term. Thank you, Sam, for that.
I would adopt anything that Sam says.
Right, yes. Sam Niederman, another guy that has really helped me out. Forgot to mention.
Legend.
Oh, what a legend. But yeah, that the research I think is really where a good reporter is built from. Finding the facts, making sure they're correct, looking for credible sources. And once that is done, I write them on my hits on note cards, and I try not to memorize them. I try to write like 1 or 2 words per line, so that way I can be pretty authentic when I'm reporting. And then it's game time. You get out there and they're counting you down in your headset and you just go for it. And there's nothing better than being in an assembly hall and oh my gosh, you're live. The crowd is so loud around you. Sometimes people will watch you every once in a while if you're on the sideline and you have a little audience of your own. And it's just so rewarding and awesome, but very nerve-wracking at the same time, but great all at the same time. But yeah, it's basically a 9 to 11 p.m. day, sometimes midnight, depending when the game ends.
Well,
I can relate to that.
Let's shift to the sport that you are covering. You are covering football. This is a team coming off one of its best years in decades. Obviously, there's a lot of unknowns in terms of when it will start, if it will start, but let's put that aside. Where is this team at right now? Are they still on an uptrend, or is the 8-4 year something that's a plateau and they're going to dip? What's kind of the outlook for this year's team?
Yeah, I've been trying to dissect that myself and thinking, what did we just have one lucky season, or is it going to continue? And it's hard to say right now, but honestly, people have a lot of confidence in this team, and myself included. I really respect Peyton Ramsey and I loved him as a quarterback, but I am very excited for Penix to return and see what he can do, see what he's been doing, recovering from his injuries. And I'm just extremely excited to watch him a lot of reporters cover him. So, when there's reporters all over the state and even the country covering this guy, that he's going to be good and he's going to be an incredible asset. I'm very excited to see what Whop Villier is going to do this year. I was ecstatic to see that he was going to stay at IU and not declare for the draft. And I was like, okay, great. We get him for another year. That's exciting. One of the best wide receivers that IU football has. And because we have those key players, we have Penix now, we have a new kind of set of special teams people in charge. And I really think it's going to be a great season. I think we'll be able to tell once the first game happens and how that goes, how this team is able to work together. I think we're going to get a better idea of how the season is going to go. But right now, I have all the confidence in the world, and I cannot wait until there is more information to cover.
Well, Whop Phillier is not only one of the better wide receivers, he's one of the better quotes. And you'll learn that as you interview him. He is unfiltered. You never know what you're going to get from Whop Phillier. That's a must go to scrum if you have a Whop Phillier interview possibility with everybody just right to Whop, because you just don't know what he's going to say. But
and that's something we appreciate as journalists, because some guys are trained to say the right thing and something that's really quotable and nice, but Whop, he just goes and he says it, and I really appreciate that, and I think the people watching appreciate that too.
Last year he's running around the Boilermakers field doing this, and we asked him about it afterwards. He said, "We the real trains now." So who knows why, but that was one of my favorite quotes of the year. We've asked this to everybody. And obviously yours is a little shorter than some of the other people's as you're still getting into this, but what's a moment, a memory, maybe a quote that stands out to you in your years of covering sports at IU?
I'll never forget this. Because I was so late in the game and I was a late bloomer as a sports reporter. Once I started getting a little bit better at it and covering bigger games, I remember I covered the Purdue IU game for women's basketball, and I interviewed Allie Patberg after. And we were done, and I was walking over and talking to Sam and a couple other guys, and I was about to, put my microphone down, head out, and a fan came over, and he comes up to me and he goes, "Hey, what's your name?" I said, "I'm Haley." He's like, "Haley what?" I said, "Haley Jordan. I'm a Big Ten Network student reporter." And he goes, "Okay." He's like, "What's your name again?" I said, "Haley Jordan." He goes, "All right." He goes, "I'm going to remember that. I'll see you on ESPN." And then he walked away. And I was like, oh my goodness, thank you. Just when people have a little bit of confidence in you, that can go a long way, because this business is so hard. It's so competitive. It's so hard. I've received, for every yes I've received, I've probably received 5 or 6 no's. And so when you get a little bit of positive feedback from fans or a coach or somebody, that really stuck with me. I'll never forget it. And I appreciate that sweet soul who told me that wherever he may be.
Well,
That's
that is an
wonderful.
awesome note to end on. Haley, you were fantastic. Thank you so much for
Thank
joining
you.
us. I wish you the best of luck with the football beat. We'll see you down at IU in the fall, and hopefully we'll have a good football season to cover.
I hope
Thanks for
so
joining
too.
us.
Thanks, guys. I'll see you later.
Take care,
Thanks,
Haley.
Haley.
Well, those were two different paths to where they are now. Jared has been working and working and working and working, and Haley kind of took a detour sophomore year and said, "You know what? This is what I want to do." And it's crazy to see, and it just shows you don't have to have it all figured out at 15 years old. You can go with the flow. You can figure it out. And everyone says you can figure things out in college, and that's what Haley has done. And boy, has she sprung up really fast. And now she gets to cover football for IUS TV, and she is making headway really fast in our media school.
Right. And part of the story that she left out for herself is that she was Miss Indiana too. So I think that's why she missed some of school, because she was going around the country, I believe, and doing stuff as Miss Indiana and giving back and doing community service. And now she's gained that confidence, that performative aspect, like I was talking about. And I failed to mention it earlier, but now she's transitioning into sports. So, and she's doing an awesome job. Jared too. He's someone that I even look up to. His writing skills are unbelievable. His photography, he has it all. It's cool that we get to be surrounded by such talented people all the time.
Yeah,
And
Jared has been
media.
great. He's a great photographer, great writer, covers that soccer team really well. And those are two people that have been just a joy to work with. Now, Tamar, this is your opportunity in the Student Media Appreciation Week. We had Connor host on Monday, Griffin's coming in on Friday. So for you, what's a moment, a memory that you remember in your years so far going into next year?
My gosh, it's really
Putting you on
hard.
the
Okay.
spot here.
Yeah, I know. And I was thinking about it this whole time. So I have two
Okay.
memories.
And you got
First
time to do
one,
them both.
I,
What are your-
I got time. First one would be I did my first women's basketball game last semester before I left Indiana. And I was interviewing Brenna Wise at the end of the game. She was hyped up. And I've covered women's basketball for IUS TV for an entire season, loved doing it, and then was able to do a Big Ten Network Student U sideline report. And that was when I got to interview her. So we're about to go live. She gives me the biggest hug. It's like, I'm so happy to see you. I'm so happy you're interviewing me. And just like, she was so hyped up from that game energy, but also she saw the familiar face because I showed up and I went to media availability. So it was really nice to kind of feel that validation of we have that connection now because I was able to show up. And if those of you that don't know, Brenna Wise is one of the legends as well for Indiana basketball and women's basketball. She's just fantastic. So that was totally one of my highlights. Second has to be when I did Hoosier Hysteria with you and Connor Hines.
I was gonna bring that one up afterwards. That was a moment that was awesome.
That was a moment, but then also we had the fire alarm go off. So it was a mix of.
We have Chuck Crabb telling us to sit down. Nobody's going anywhere.
Right.
Our
And
producers are in our ears saying, do not get up. You're not leaving. That was a bizarre moment.
And that whole week leading up to it was awesome. I got to do a Hoosier Hysteria tip-off show in the Cuban Center with Sam Niederman, and then getting to be with you and Connor in the live report. It was just exhilarating. I've never been so excited. Truthfully, that was like exactly because I've been a Hoosier my whole life. So that leading up to that moment, getting to be in Assembly Hall, favorite moment ever. That was number one.
That was the loudest
talk about your
game,
experience.
Loudest event that I've done at IU. That place was packed. It was rocking. And it's just a cool atmosphere. It's something like you said, you watch as a kid. You're like, man, it'd be cool to go to Hoosier Hysteria sometime. And boom, we're there on the little table, courtside, talking to Bendu Yaney during a dunk contest and chatting it up with, I think you talked with Matt Roth that day. And
I did.
That was a great day.
And Calvert Chaney.
That was awesome. That was one of my top moments as well. Man,
but what is the
there's
top
so many.
moment?
I don't know if I have the top moment.
Maybe it hasn't happened yet. We still have another year.
maybe senior year's got something. The trip to Duke my sophomore year was unbelievable. IU stunk it up, but that's beside the point. Cameron Indoor was just an environment. It's on everyone's bucket list. I was fortunate enough to go as a pregame halftime host for the radio station, and that was so much fun. I mean, that place was rocking, and the song they play pregame to get everybody hyped is Every Time We Touch.
Really?
Yeah, I think that's what it's called.
Yeah, no. Oh,
I'm not going to sing it.
I know that. No, I know that well. Oh, why not? Come on.
But it was crazy to see everybody bumping to that song. Like, it's like, what? That's the one you chose? But it is crazy. They're all clapping at the same. It's like a giant Viking clap. It is
my
crazy.
gosh.
I'm just sitting there like, that's the song you chose for getting everybody hyped up, but it works, and that place gets loud. But I would say that the trip to Nebraska was awesome. That was when IU got their sixth win at Nebraska. I got to call that game for WIUX. I would say women's basketball beating Iowa is up there for me. My sophomore year, I was just on the court filming, and that place, that was crazy. Down by like 17, I think it was. They came back, beat a top 10 team. Man, there's many more that I'm not thinking of. But man, it has been fun. Like Jared said though, it's not even the sports always. It's the people. I mean, it's every day walking
Absolutely.
into the media school and seeing people sitting in the commons and just chatting with them, or going to assembly hall and sitting on media row with your buddies and watching a basketball game together. I mean, that or getting in a car and driving to Purdue or driving to Michigan. That's the type of stuff that you don't forget. And that's the type of stuff I took from being a high school athlete. Was the trips with your teammates are almost more fun than the actual games. And that's something that has continued even into college. So I completely agree with what Jared said.
Oh, absolutely. When I say that I love the grind and I miss the grind, it's because of the people fully.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yep.
just love I look forward to media availability and setting up my camera and asking questions and like just being in that environment, being with not only the players and getting to interview the coaches, that's unbelievable. An experience that it baffles me every time that this is what I get to do, because it's not work, it's fun. That's
Mm-hmm.
like the true test. If you don't feel like you're working and you feel like you're just having fun, that's what you're meant to be in. But it's meeting people like you, like Connor, like Griffin, Haley, Jared. There's so many people that are continuing to make my experience so incredible, because everyone that you surround yourself with is so passionate. And that's what's so amazing, is that we get to be in this environment where everyone just loves what they're doing and we get to do the grind together, so it doesn't feel hard.
Well, shout out to Stefan and Drew and Jared and Haley, who have come on the show so far this week. We have 2 more guests on Friday. We are kind of taking a detour from our normal top 5 Friday because we want to continue to highlight the great things that are going on in the IU media school. Excuse me. So Matt Cohen is coming on. He will start us off. Everybody, if you know Matt Cohen, you know that'll be fantastic. And we're sure to talk about the Washington Nationals winning the World Series. But we've also got Dr. Galen Clavio coming on to kind of put a bow on Student Media Appreciation Week, talk about what's going on at the media school, what he's seen, and how Indiana is starting to make those upward climbs in the rankings. And it's really going to be great to have him along. And I
As
can't wait.
Haley says, the god of sports media.
He's kind of the man behind this podcast. He hired me, so I guess we got to get him on the podcast at some point. So he'll be on Friday. He and Cohen will talk a little bit about the student media program and put a bow on what's been a really great and insightful week. I hope you're learning what it is like to be a student. And we're not trying to be like, oh my gosh, we need your sympathy. It's just something different. And you see our names on Twitter, but you don't some people don't understand the grind, and it's a grind even as a professional. But then you throw classes in, and your social life is gone, and then there's certain things that we're hoping that you're kind of gaining from this week that we're highlighting with some of our students. So Tamar, thanks again for joining me here today. For Haley Jordan and Jared Rigdon and Tamar Scher, I'm Austin Render saying so long from Unpaid Interns. We'll see you on Friday.